Hello guys, welcome to this new channel. I'm Roberto, an Italian student of medicine, and I decided to open this channel because I really like what I study and I like to explain in a simple way to all of you many parts of medicine in different points of view, like anatomy, pathology, physiology, microbiology, and so on. Excuse me if my English is not perfect or my pronunciation is not perfect too. It should sound, I don't know if it sounds ridiculous to you, but I hope not. So let's begin with this first lesson that would be about the function of one of the most important organs in our body. Guess what it is? The heart. Let's begin. So you can see here the heart interior. This is a frontal section, so this watches the anterior part of our thorax. You can see here that heart is composed by two atriums here and two ventricles right here. There are many valves, 4 valves in particular, that are the two semilunar valves. Only one is visible here. This is the pulmonary valve with 2 of the 3 semiluns of fibrous material. These are the atrioventricular valves. You can see here, this is the tricuspid, which is the right one, and this is the mitral, which is the left one. So valves are here to prevent reflux of blood from a cavity to the other one, so that the flow of the blood can only be in one direction. So let's now talk about the main topic of today, which is the function of the heart by studying the Weger's diagram. So as you can see here, this is the Weger's diagram and is composed of many curves. So the first gray line is the aortic pressure, as you can see here on the right. It is the pressure that you can find in the aorta. So as you see here, the fact that there is the aortic pressure here shows that the side of the heart that is considered and studied by this diagram is the left one, because the left part of the heart is the one that works with higher pressure. So we usually study that part to evaluate the function of the heart with this diagram. So this is the aortic pressure, so the pressure that is in the aorta, which is the first artery that departs from the left ventricle and goes on to the systemic circulation. This gray line here is the atrial pressure, so the pressure you can find in the left atrium. And then we have this blue bright line, which is the ventricular pressure, which is very important, and of course here is highlighted, and is the one that guides all the process. There is a red line too. This is the ventricular volume, so it's the volume of blood that is found in the ventricle during all the cycle. This is an electrocardiogram registration, and we will explain later in one of the next videos how electrocardiogram works. And this is a phonocardiogram registration, so the tones you hear with a stethoscope by placing the bell of the stethoscope on the thorax. A cycle of the heart usually lasts between 0.8 and 1 second. It depends on the rhythm of the heart, and it is composed by the systole and the diastole. So what we see here, this little curve at the beginning, is the first part of the cycle, which is the end of the diastole, when the atrial part of the heart is contracting. So this is the part where the atrium contracts and let all the blood that is remain in the atrial chamber in the ventricle. As you see here, there is a sudden uphill of the curve of the ventricular volume, because this is what really ends up the filling of the ventricle, and here you can see the depolarization, the electrocardiogram curve that corresponds to the atrial contraction, and we will explain later, as I said. So here we have finally the contraction of the ventricle, explained in the electrocardiogram with the QRS curve. Here you can see it's the same. Here the atrioventricular valve closes, in this case the mitral valve closes. Why? Because the pressure of the ventricle, you can see here, it goes up, it overcomes the pressure of the atrium. So the valve mechanically closes and prevents the reflux of the blood in the left atrium. So here is a sharp and very steep rising of the curve here. This is the isovolumic contraction. Isovolumic because, as you can see here from the red line, the volume stays the same, but the pressure rises very, very sharply because, of course, all the valves here are closed, the atrioventricular valve and the aortic valve too, so the pressure rises because the myocardium and the muscle of the heart contracts, but the blood is not going anywhere, so the pressure rises very, very sharply. The pressure quickly reaches the pressure of the aorta, so the aortic valve opens here, and the ejection part begins. So the part of the cycle where the blood goes out from the ventricle into the aorta. After this part, you see here the pressure begins to go down again. When the pressure equalizes again, the gray line of the aortic pressure, that of course it follows the pressure of the ventricle, because the blood that is going out from the ventricle makes the pressure of the aorta rise too. But when the pressure of the ventricle goes down, of course the aortic valve closes to prevent the reflux in the left ventricle. And of course there are pathology cases where reflux can be real. We will face it in next lessons. So here the valve closes, and of course again here all the valves are closed, so aortic valve and atrioventricular valves are closed. So this is the isovolumic relaxation as opposed to isovolumic contraction. There is no change in volume. You can see here after the volume of the ventricle went down after the ejection part, here there is no change in ventricular volume until the pressure of the ventricle reach again the pressure of the atrioventricular valve. So now the atrioventricular valve opens again and the blood can flow again into the ventricle. Here it is where the diastole begins. This is the first part, which is called the rapid inflow part here, and you see the steep curve here, and then a slow inflow or diastasis part of the ventricular inflow. So here the pressure stays quite the same in the ventricle because there is no closure in the atrioventricular valve, and then at the end we start again with the atrial contraction to start a new cycle. The P curve here corresponds to the atrial depolarization and contraction. The QRS complex here corresponds to ventricular contraction, and the T curve here corresponds to the ventricular repolarization, but we will again explain this later. To finish here, we can see the tones of the heart. If you listen it with a stethoscope, you can hear the first tone, which is wider, which is more intense than the second, and it's like a tomb. So the first one is a tomb. This is actually made of 4 components. The most important one is the closure of the atrioventricular valves. And the second tone is a bit shorter and a bit more sharp, so it's like tum ta, okay. After the second, usually there is a big pause between the second and the next first tone, so new cycle. But in some cases, like after a physical activity or in babies, the third tone is also audible and is normal, not pathological. There is also a fourth tone in the moment of the atrial contraction that is usually pathologic, but it is not shown here. So guys, this was all for today. If you want to give me a piece of advice, just scroll down to the comment section and let me know what you think. If you like the video, it would be great for me if you leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next video. Bye bye.